Well, how Hunter children do this shit? The Queen Quet coming to Hunter, gonna get your TV. Yeah, Hunter children. I know he Hunter to look on this shit and wonder where I'd be. No, I ain't the deal upon one of we all of them thing like that. I did upon top of lava. Look at this shit. Hard and thing like that. Handle like we see all of it. Come out that ball, key and on land, come and grow thing like that. Right here in Hawaii on corner and thing like that. Now Hunter can get it that breeze and thing like that around in a fight. So Hunter chiller, I want you for 20 vehicles. But yet he want me to crack my teeth out and thing like that so that Hunter can understand how their journey, that we journey from one sea to the next sea. Hunter chiller need forget it. Just who we to be and what we to fight for. For we land and we waters and for we to be free.
So don't forget to say this is lava. We have the same stand that we have to take, no matter where we are, from island to island, culture to culture. Wanna chillin' and we chillin' right here and things like that. And so it is a blessing to be here with the family in Hawaii, but it is also painful to hear their story, be exactly our story. You can take my voice and that of Auntie Leah and blend them together. You can easily sing them like a song, but it would be one of sadness that we have to fight to get others to understand our behaviors, our culture, as we say, the big fish are now honey fish. Well, in this case, it's no different. But
If all of us don't begin to stand together, there won't be any more fish in any of our waters, in any of our oceans. So we need to begin to under and overstand other cultures. So even if you're not from one of the islands, you should start to want to learn the way in which we think, the way in which we do things, the way in which we are inextricably tied to these lands and these waters. And so that it all comes together, so that it's there for us to present to our next generation. If we do not do this, there won't be any more fish in the sea. There won't be anything on the earth for us to pass on to the next generation. And so it is my appeal to you to begin to under and understand all these cultures in the world, and not just yours and not just the way that you see it, but the way that others have done it back before we even got here. And so you have to tune in with your mind, but also tune in with your spirit in order to gain this knowledge and understanding. So whether on lava or on sea island sand, whether a voice should be flowing together. And so that this way our traditions, our culture, our knowledge will be able to keep us interconnected. So tune in for Yeddi just a little bit more with we. This year the Queen Quet, head from the body of the Gullah Geechee nation, right here from the big island in Hawaii, not the mine on the other sea.
the same stories.
Welcome to Kalaimano. Kalaimano is the name of the shoreline. You're in the land division, or what we call the Ahupua'a of Kahulukule. And as you travel throughout the island, all these places that you visited have names. You were at Hulu, you were at Anaiho'omalu, you were at Waikoloa. All these various places have names. Some of these place names were after people. People who settled our islands hundreds and years ago. Some of them came just over the mountain from Ka'u, and then they settled on this side, on the west side of Hawaii. And when they became familiar and connected, they stayed. Waikoloa, Anaiho'omalu. That particular area is the name of people who came from Ka'u, from the other side of the island. It was a family. Father, mother, daughters. Daughters who at the age who said, we need to go look for husbands. And so they said, we're going to go to the west side. They left Ka'u, came over Mauna Loa, Hualalai, all the way to this side. But these women favored foods of the ocean. One loved he'e, the other one loved opihi, the other one loved certain types of fish. And they said, Mom and Dad, we're going. We will find us a companion who can satisfy our mea ono. And when they did get to Puako, lo and behold, there they found a young man who could satisfy their taste. And her name was Puako. And she married a young man from that area who knew how to find he'e, the octopus, and satisfied her for a lifetime. Same as Waikalo. Came over, she looked for a young man who could feed her this certain type of fish, and there, right that Anaihomalu with a huge fish pond, was another young man who could satisfy this young lady's taste for mea ono of fish, mollusk, anai. And so they remained here. I come from the uplands of Pu'uanahulu. Anahulu is the name of their mother. It is in connection with the Ahua of Pu'uwawa'a, and Wa'awa'a was the name of their father. It is a pu'u, a cinder cone that is very dominant, right in the uplands at about 2,500 elevation. And this place, or the next tree of Pu'uwa'a, is a land of my ancestors. That's where my father was born. My grandfather, grandmother, great-grandfather, great-grandmother. So the next three aupua'as here, Kaukulehu, Pu'uwawa'a, Pu'uanahulu, are all the shoreline beaches where my ancestors were born as well as have been buried. My name is Leina Ala. Everyone today can refer to me as Auntie Lei.
Auntie Lei.
Auntie Lei.
Mahalo.
I am Grandma. This is my mopuna here that has taken this young lady under his wings. Really does. He will be very selective. But you had Kalaimano, and this is where I have been employed for maybe just about 3 years. I worked in the Ahupua of Kaukulehu for the past 40 years. And this is where, if we went further south, to a very special shoreline and beach area called Hawai'i, is the birthplace of my father, as well as my grandmother. And if we went north to Kiholo, just the next Ahupua over, that is the birthplace of my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So this area, this whole region, as you look around and observe the land, notice it is very desolate. From the place you came, Anaihomalu, all the way to Honokohau, beyond the airport. This region of land was known as Kekauwai'ole, waterless. But this was a shoreline that was very, very dense in population because of the abundance on this shoreline. And when you will walk to the shoreline of Belika, you will note its abundance. 30 years ago, fish would be swimming at my feet when I would walk into the waters of Hawaii. Schools of fish I would swim in by the time I would be in 15 to 20 feet of water. That's 30 years ago, 40 years ago, not today. My family were basically fishermen, my ancestors. At the time my father was 7, by 1934, he had to leave the shoreline and go up Mauka to the uplands to reside on a homestead with his father and grandfather. And there by about the age of 13, he left school and he became a cowboy. So, a new tradition, from Opelo fisherman, he was now a paniolo. And he worked for the ranch up Mauka, Pu'uwawa'a for 51 years. And then he retired. So from the native style of shoreline gathering, we became Mauka people. My father became a cowboy, he was very, very land-based. Very land-based. Hunt, plant. So we became very stationed on Malta. He marries a fisherman daughter from way, way south. So this interaction allows us to continue to stay connected not only to our land, but to our sustainability of the ocean as well as the uplands. There was constant communication. When you look up Malta here, it's only 6-7 miles up here. And this is a constant trek for our family. If not by foot, in later years by donkey. After that, we had the 4 wheels to get us quickly in time. But the shoreline served as a very vital support for our existence. Because you see the land, how dry it is. When it gets very molo, the farms in the uplands have a little difficult time of producing. We can sometimes have very bad droughts of Malta. And in the old days, prior to the 1950s, all of the homes are all on water catchment. We never have wells to pump water to our houses. We all had water catchment, water tanks. Where I came from, we didn't have electricity until 1959. So it was a lifestyle that allowed us to become very connected to the land. We knew how to malama what we had in the backyard, or else we would go without. Salt was very vital to the community. Over 500 people lived where I live. Back in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, without electricity. So pakai, the making of sea salt, was very vital to us because that was our refrigeration. In my kitchen, there was only a cowboy table, 2 benches, and 2 huge 5-gallon crock pots. And that was either pork or beef. And then we had a small screen safe where, if luxury provided, we'd have a can of corned beef, a can of Spam, or a can of sardines. That's where it was kept, with the flour and sugar, so the rodents wouldn't get to it. But that was the kitchen. Very, very simple. But when you go out on the land, there would be mango, peach, plum, avocado, banana, sweet potatoes, taro, all varieties that God gives us. We're able to exist on all of that every year. It was like almost 45 minutes to the closest store from our homestead to town. My father, on a cowboy pay, we didn't get an automobile until like 1950. So prior to that time, we existed literally on what was either produced in the garden, what he could hunt, or what was produced in the dryland. Very, very simple. But when you go out on the land, there would be mango, peach, plum, avocado, banana, sweet potatoes, taro, all varieties that God gives us. We were able to exist on all of that every year. It was like almost 45 minutes to the closest store from our homestead to town. My father, on a cowboy pay, we didn't get an automobile until like 1950. So prior to that time, we existed literally on what was either produced in the garden, what he could hunt, or what was produced in the dryland forest. It was very, very menial, yet abundant, because it occurred seasonally. We knew when mango was going to come. We knew when the banana was going to fruit. We knew when the plum trees, the orchards would be filled. And those days, the ranch made sure that orchards were planted for the families, because it was too far to go to the store. Here, this island is totally existent on those harbors. If there was ever a dock strike, there would be great suffering on these islands. We've had it occur at least twice in my lifetime. And trust me, when you have a generation of people who don't know how to act without electricity, who don't know how to act when they don't have tissue to wipe their butts, it becomes a problem. But it's a reality on this island. So it's very important for us to understand why we have to take care of this small little island. Because if we don't have what's in the ocean, if we don't have good lands of Malta, people would have a very difficult time existing here in these islands. Very difficult. We become so engaged in running to McDonald's, running to Costco, running to here, when we're out of this, out of that. Oh my goodness. You just get really, really concerned about how this generation will exist 20 years from now if they don't know how to make salt. They don't know how to eat dry fish. They don't know how to go pick a mango right off the tree. It's like, ew. But not when we were kids, it was yum, you know? But these kids nowadays, you tell them, okay, let's go pick mango off the tree. Go pick, avocado, banana. It's like, ew. Gotta be in one package from the store. Then they can eat them. It's really, really, but it's up to us, right?
Right.
What do we share? How do we teach? And what do we perpetuate? Within the past few years, maybe about 8 years ago, I worked at a very unique resort. We had a beautiful bay. But when we start building development along the shoreline, the county and state obligates this development to provide access to the shoreline for any person to come to the shoreline. And being way out here in the boonies, nobody used to want to drive all the way out here to go fishing. They would rather fish right in Kona, or gather right where they live. Well, once the resort started up here, all of a sudden, each resort had to provide 2 access, north and south, north and south, north and south. And within the past 15, 20 years, 3 developments have occurred on this shoreline, just within 3 miles. That's 6 access points. Maybe you would have 2 fishermen come in the week because everybody was busy working. They didn't have time to go holo holo. Maybe on a Saturday they would bring the family and friends and then go fish, go holo holo. The community became so engaged. By the 80s, we became so engaged in hotel tourism industry that everybody was working in the hotel. Ranching, agriculture, plantations were dwindling. It was actually shutting down. Okay? No longer had pineapple, no longer had plantation. So the new generation was now, me, by 1970, I was being trained to work in the hotel, hospitality. Okay? We were slowly being taken off or driven away from the land and becoming engaged in the hotel because hotels were starting up. Tourist industry was coming in. All these points of access to the shoreline that was not accessible became very accessible, which meant when the hotels start, jobs come up. People move into the island. People who are not from here. When I was 8 to maybe 18, I knew almost everyone in Kona. Literally. I lived up in the boonies. I could drive to Kailua, and I knew every person I was passing because we were related to almost everybody in Kona. But by 1980, all of a sudden, there became half of a population that I didn't know. By 1990, aloha no. 2000, you wonder where all these people that I knew in the 70s, where have they gone? That is how quickly population increased in this little island. It tripled You know, we had maybe about 20,000. It tripled in about 30 years. Can you imagine the impact on the shoreline?
I sure
The
can.
shoreline didn't get bigger, the island didn't get bigger when the population increased. It remained the same. The resources remained the same. Fish replenished the same. They didn't triple because of the population. They just had their babies seasonally. Each species seasonally had what they normally had. Just because the take was increasing, it didn't mean they tripled produced. Nature continued its same course. But when people I didn't know started moving here, their behavior changed. Behavior changed. They became very unfamiliar. There were people who were not familiar with this shoreline. There are people who are not familiar that when you go down by the stoplight, you can wave, you can get out of the car and talk. It was like, no, okay? They didn't do that anymore. You wave at them, it's like, ooh, who you? That's the behavior that was changed. Our schools tripled. I mean, half of our schools are in portables, okay? Portables that have to get built almost every 3 years because of the increase in population. But that does not change the element. The resource, the land, the ocean didn't change. And so Tri-Weight was born because somebody decided they could make a business out of the resource. Okay? You know, charter fishing just boom.
Yep.
All of a sudden it became easy to make money. You can go pound opihi and make $300 one Christmas. 1 gallon opihi. $300. You just take them to Oahu, bam, New Year's Eve. June, graduation, from May to August, $300 a gallon of opihi. But when all those other islands no more opihi, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to come here. They're going to gather elsewhere. But they're not from here. What about our graduation parties over here? Our wedding parties?
Right.
Our children's birthday parties?
Right.
We start going without. And when we start going without, that's when the voices are heard. So the KMLAC, the Kalukule Marine Life Advisory Council, was created back when we had impacts on aquarium fishing. They were starting to take all these beautiful colored fish from the reef and sending them to the mainland. And they were coming in front of our hotel on a boat with this huge vacuum and just leaving it in the ocean and filling their tanks up with these beautiful fish. And they would be out there for like 2-3 days. Until we finally said, okay, state what's happening. We have a situation. But you know, if they didn't plan well for schools, hospitals, for this kind of increased population, I don't think they planned well for this kind of impact on the resources. And that's what happened. They fell short. So we're not going to point fingers. We became a community, a voice that said, how can we help? We have a problem. If you folks are, you know, at ends here, how can we, the community, help? And so we became engaged, involved in going, partnership, and we wanted to know where our reef is at. Okay, we've had the impact for 15 years. How healthy is our reef? Let's see what we can do. And that's what we did. We went to the state. And then Nature Conservancy came into the picture. And at our hotel, we wanted to know how healthy is our reef. So they were doing a study, and we asked if they could come and do a study right there at Kapolei Bay. And that's how we connected. Chad Wiggins was the diver. He said, Auntie, we have 3 divers. We can come maybe for a week. I said, we'll put you up at the hotel. No worries. Then you no need drive all the way from the harbor, all the way from Quai High. You can just go right out of our resort. Your tanks are right here. And they were diligent. They gave us information on telling us how our reef looked, how healthy it was, where was the percentage of our fish, just so we could have an idea. Because as the years was going by, from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s, when I kept going back into the water, there was no more red uhu anymore that would swim at my feet. By the time I'm in 10 feet of water, there was no more veke. By the time I was in 15, 20 feet, the uhu was getting smaller. Things were slowly disappearing. You know, we have what we call Ampapua. In that small bay, we had very unique species. We had a puhi that was like almost 7 feet long. The head was about this big. But one day, this fisherman decides it would be good to take to the flea market. And just because he shot an uhu and that puhi came out and took his uhu, he made sure the next time he would get that eel. And sure enough, one day, here was the 7-foot eel on his shoulder that he was going to take to the flea market. And that puhi was there for generations. Generations. Kupuna. When you see that kind of behavior, for us who have been on this land for generations, it really hurts. Because we know our place. But when you have a Malahini who comes and he sees a dollar sign for something that we have acknowledged for generations, on his shoulders, going to the flea market, no longer to exist in the waters of Hawai'i. Aloha no. For us, it's very kaumaha. Very kaumaha. When we don't see the red uhu that is always at our feet, at the waters of Kane for generations, because someone thought it would make a good dollar come January. The redfish for New Year's, he would make money on that. No longer do we see the red uhu at the waters of Kane. When we go for fish right at a water hole that has been there for generations, moi, my mother treasured that fish because babies can eat that. When you want to feed babies fish, you feed them the one with less bone. Right. And every time you want, you go to that hole. All it took was 20 minutes for one boat to drop a whole net and take the whole school. That is the kind of behavior that creates situation, that creates imbalance.
Right.
Today, we said, okay, you guys gotta try waiting. Before you're going to shoot something, make sure it's something you're going to eat. Before you're going to shoot something, make sure it's in the season. It's not Hawaii. It's not going to have babies. We don't know everything. The KMLEC doesn't know everything. It is a group that started up by individuals. Voices of people from OHA, the state, from Kamehameha schools, the landowner, from community people of Mauka, Ohana family, as well as a few of the civic people, the community, the Hawaiian Civic Club. We said this cannot continue because we're here every day and we're seeing how it's not pono, it's not good. What can we do? So we went to the state again. They took care of the aquarium fish. Now we have another problem. Okay, commercial gathering. We don't mind if they're taking them home for eat on the table, for feed the kids. Because our own employees at the resort were going, but they know how to take. They would go with their bucket and net, not with the pull on the red wagon where you can roll the whole one on the sidewalk and just jump in and shoot all the fish you want. They only took what they needed to feed the kids, feed the family. Next day, they throw the net. They're not going to take the whole net. They're only going to take the fish they know that will feed the family. The rest they throw back. That is a common behavior of the Kama'aina of the place.
Right.
But that behavior was not becoming evident anymore.
Right.
It was all this new kind of behavior. Fortunately, we have a generation of very, very diligent young people who see the change, who hear and they listen and say, what can they do? So they go and get an education. They become involved diligently on new practices of conservation, of new practices of teaching that us, as we're getting old, we cannot do. We cannot be going on the shoreline. So they are the ones who do it. Okay? Kalani, Pelika. Pretty soon, you know. Onibua, my mokuna, can identify. I don't want him to identify from a book. I want him to be able to go to that shoreline and identify. I want him to be able to jump into the water and identify. Not just talk about it. And if we do not do something, that's what's going to happen. Because it's happening. I don't see the ulu at my feet. There is no hui there anymore. There is no moiho anymore. That is gone. So it's up to them, this young generation of minds, to go get an education, but they need to know their place. That's one thing, when you're Kanaka Hawaiian, you know your land. You don't just come Mahaoi and talk about Kona if you're from Niihau, because that way, island way, is not the same down here. We're different. We may be Hawaiian, same color skin, but the land is different. So they need to come. We need to teach our own people, my nieces, my nephews, my son, my daughter, so that there is a continuation of knowledge for Kaupuleni, from Kaupuleni, for the future of Kaupuleni. That's what it's all about. And Tri-Wait is an effort for the people to just try wait. And our proposal is to literally rest this shoreline for 10 years. You know, West Hawaii, literally, this side of the state, is the more advanced in the state on conservation, on the marine fisheries. Because we had issues back in the 90s that made us focus on situations and problems. So we had the West Hawaii Fishery Council that says, okay, we're going to keep monitoring, we're going to keep tabs. So when we came up with our proposal, and see, what is interesting, yeah, is that we, even Hawaiians today, have become so accustomed to just go wherever you like and take, that they forget that the practice was also to not take.
Right, right.
In our native culture, there was a time for seasonal gathering and there was a time for seasonal no gather. But you try tell people today, you know, try wait 5 months. Nobody, they don't listen. When our proposal came out and said, try wait 10 years, whoa, nationwide, everybody heard that, and it became a stir. You know, it became like, what? We're not going to fish down here for 10 years. Oh, I'm going to be too old by the time they open up. You know what? Maybe you're more puna. go and fish. Maybe you teach them opuna within the next 10 years how to fish. This is just 3.6. Look at the big island. You get plenty shoreline to fish or to teach. But it's important right now because here at Kapolei we have Pelika who is being so, what is the word I want to use? Dedicated, committed to teaching this knowledge of first understanding the species and how we can become sustainable people. And that is a vehicle that needs to be loaded. People need to get on board because if they don't understand the resource, they don't understand its life, its cycle, they don't understand what it's like to be here in Hawaii, in Kaupulehu, that resource will not exist. And we can count on our hands how much resource get down there. That is vital. Hawaiians, we say, you know, it's a Hawaiian right, native Hawaiian right to go gather. Come here, come here. It's also a native Hawaiian right to stop and rest. What do you think the kapu system was all about? You want to talk native and traditional. What do you think the kapu system was all about? That was the do nots. Do nots. We never have a system on tell you whatever you can do. It was very vital for a culture to say, this is what you cannot do. Because man, he can do anything. And when you see the problems in the world, who creates it? Man. Nature does her thing. She has a problem, look, she takes care of it. Yeah, one lava flow, easy.
Right.
Easy. We have a problem, done. Okay? We have a problem at the shoreline, one tsunami. Easy. Situation is taken care of. And you think we can fix it? No way. When Tutupeli says it's time, it's time. Kanaloa says it's time, it's time. We gotta understand our place on this earth. If we don't take care of it, we will be the losers.
Right.
Because nature will take care of itself. So with that said, we put a proposal to the governor, it sits on his desk. We try wait for 10 years. We have, hopefully, the university, Palika, with her students, to try and create enough study, enough ways of creating a management plan, as well as with consistent partnerships with Nature Conservancy, with the state. You know, we're all in this together, and sometimes that's the way it has to go. You have to work together, partnership, and we found it to be very, very the only way to go. You know, to do that. That's the only way to go. Because we have a government, we are a culture, and you need science. So with these three partners, we have, I think, a good opportunity. And we have a generation of people, Kalani, Pelika, when you go to college. I'm sorry, Elise? Leah.
Well.
You know, these are all our future leaders who's going to be involved in making sure what you folks can share today as well. Because global warming, climate change, we feel it. All our forests, we have the rapid death. What is that from? You know, geothermal, what does it do to our island? The ocean is rising. Last year, we had almost 13 hurricanes come through this island, through the state. Unheard of. It rained the whole summer. I couldn't make salt. That is a change. For us to become dependent on salt, and it rained the whole year, Paitahekas, the local, couldn't dry. It would just be watered down every day. This is how we, these are all impacts that we didn't really think about. Anyway, with that said, that is what Tri-Weight is all about. That's where it's at with the governor. But the dollar does speak louder than words sometimes. That's the opposition. That is the opposition for our proposal. But we leave it in Akua's hands.
Yeah. Yes.
We have a process. We're going to say we believe in government. We're going to go according to the process and see how far it gets us. That's where we're at right now. In the meantime, I'm thankful that I can come to work at this God-given place. I can bring my mo'opuna with me so he can know this is where his ancestors walked, played, just like here. And mahalo for that. Okay?
Mahalo. Mahalo.
How Hana chillin' to do? We're glad for day y'all with Hana chillin' and thing like that. With the Queen Quet head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. They from yon upon the other rest island and thing like that. They were Hana Madi Yeddi about called Sea Island and thing like that. And they're from one island called St. Helena Island. Yeah. And so I am very happy to be here from St. Helena Island. I'm the head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation. I'm the head of state for the Gullah Geechee Nation. I'm also the chiefess and the Queen Mother for all Gullah Geechee people worldwide. And our islands extend from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. We live in the Atlantic Ocean. And a part of the Gullah Geechee Nation extends to mainland up to the St. Johns River. My people are people of the land and of the water. So I always say that the land is our family and the waterway is our bloodline. I received that because of my ancestry. So I honor my mother's father, Henry Holmes, who taught my mother how to harvest from the land and from the water. I honor my father, Herbert Goodwine, who continued the traditions of my uncle, Sammy Moutry, who was a boat builder. And his uncle before them was Sonny Goodwine, who is still known as a master boat builder and shipbuilder, and he passed before I arrived in this realm. And so, yet and still, they are always with me, and their traditions, our traditions as Gullah Geechee people, live on in me. And that is why I do the work that I do through the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, which was the first organization in the entire world to have my community's name in the name. And because I'm a computer scientist and mathematician, I was the first one to launch us onto the internet. So instead of a cast net being used, God had me to join the family to spread another kind of net, to draw in others, but yet to still nurture the mind, the body, the spirit. And so I know it is divine order that we are all here and that we are on waters and that we heard from our Auntie of their harvesting here in this place, in this space. So just like with Gullah Geechees, you're never alone. The family compound is always with you. These ancestors have been with you doing this since we got here. Shout! And things like that. So as I always say, Hunter must take care of the root for heal the tree. So I thank all the organizers for giving us some tools and opportunity to just dig a little deeper. Hunter bless. God bless on the children.